Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. Thanks for tuning in. Got another great show lined up for you this week. As you can see on the screen, our buddy Kennington Lloyd Smith III, Kenny Smith, with the Moines Register in Hawk Central. Kenny, how you doing, my friend?
Good, how are you?
Good seeing you. Thank you. Kenny's going to talk to us about men's basketball, women's basketball, Hawkeye football. We got so much to get to today. Kenny's going to join us for the entire show, but I wanted to start the show off initially by saying Craig and Stacy Schrader haven't been with us the last couple of weeks because we've done full-length feature shows on Gary Dolphin, Peyton Sanford, Coach Bluter, Caitlin Clark, Monica Sonano. So we're getting back to the business of Iowa athletics, the whole spectrum here. And so Kenny and I are going to get to that this week. And Craig and Stacy have been busy with dance marathons. And kudos to you that participated. The Iowa Hawkeye Dance Marathon at the University of Iowa with the students, over $1 million, set another record this year. And Craig and Stacy and Fight with Flash and the Stead Family Children's Hospital Fighting Cancer are still raising over that $1 million in phone donations online. It's just been wonderful. So Craig and Stacy were at Ames last week for the Iowa State Dance Marathon. They've got many more at high schools and colleges throughout the area. So they'll hopefully join us next week if we can get them away from their busy schedule. But Kenny, I want to talk to you a little bit about NIL. And when we had Peyton Sanford on last week, we had Peyton talk about donating to children's charities and Campus Christian Ministries and various other organizations. He and his brother Price, who is coming to Iowa to play basketball next year, they have an apparel line out right now with our buddy from Zoark Athletics or Zoark Apparel, Connor Whites. They're donating their proceeds to fighting cancer. We saw what Tyler Linderbaum did last year. And as I said to Peyton Sanford this last week when we had him on the show, Kenny, this is the great part about NIL. Most of these athletes are donating, if not all of it, most of their proceeds to the Stead Family Children's Hospital or other worthwhile charities. It's just fantastic to see, and that was the true spirit behind NIL, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And that was something that when the idea of collectives and how Iowa can insert themselves into the NIL game, community service was an obvious branch for Iowa to tap into, and that's exactly what they've done. And aside from the players doing their own individual donations, the Swarm Collective, I mean, that's what it's based on, is community service-based initiatives. It seems like every other day or every week at the least, you see football players at elementary schools imparting to the kids or doing canned food drives or clothing drives or whatever the case may be. So Iowa, obviously, with the relationship they had with the Children's Hospital, it just made it a very easy fit for them to continue to do that. And, truthfully, the fact that these athletes are so present and their faces are out in front of these initiatives is driving more people to donate to the hospital and to donate to these initiatives and to continue to give, because obviously they're going to give some to the athletes, but it's ultimately going to a really good cause as well. So everybody's seeming to benefit from this, and it really is nice to kind of see it in full swing now and seeing the athletes taking advantage of this platform.
And what I wanted to jump in with was Brad Heinrichs joined us a couple weeks ago, another one of those full-length feature shows we did with the Swarm Collective for the University of Iowa. And that's what we talked about, were the two factions of the nonprofit side, but also then the profit side for the athletes, like a business. And it's interesting, when Brad said that, to his point and to the spirit of this new NIL collective, it was to get the athletes out in the community, and not just with sponsors and advertisers, but you see, Kenny, they're at school reading programs, and it's very, I don't want to say neat because that's such a trite word to say, but it is fantastic to see them out in the community, but also, as you mentioned, raising funds. And that was the whole spirit, again, behind NIL. So when we proceed forward, and not just at the University of Iowa, but for the Big Ten, we still haven't heard much talk from the Big Ten about replacing Kevin Warren, who went to the Chicago Bears in an administrative capacity. What are you hearing, or where are we at? Because we need to fill an opening right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much about where the Big Ten is going. Obviously, it's a position that's going to be highly coveted, and honestly, it's a position that is premier in college athletics, perhaps the most premier position in college athletics. When you think about the way Kevin Warren set up the Big Ten, and I don't think that there's been enough conversations about the opportunity the Big Ten has to become the premier conference in college football next fall. I mean, you think about having the big noon kickoff game on Fox, and then fans are going to be able to flip over to CBS for the 3:30 game, and then they're going to have NBC taking over college football for the first time in a Saturday night feature. The Big Ten is going to be on national TV all Saturday on major networks. So that position of somebody coming in and taking charge of that and leading the Big Ten into the future is going to be something that's going to draw interest from people all over the country. And it's a really significant hire for the Big Ten because whatever this person decides with his or her contingency or a conglomerate of decision makers about where they're going to go moving forward with divisions or scheduling or pods or how they're going to do the Big Ten championship game. Those things are going to be really, really, really important, especially for programs like Iowa trying to figure out where they're going to fit in the new Big Ten landscape. So the Big Ten is taking their time, and understandably so, for the reasons that I just laid out. So, I'm kind of waiting just like you are, and I'm really going to be interested to see in which direction they go.
They are definitely going to have to be a free thinker and open-minded. And when I say that he started off on rocky territory, everybody went through rocky territory when COVID first hit, and that was his start on the job. So good luck with that. And I think he and everybody else got through that in pretty good fashion. As you mentioned, the highlights of Kevin's career as Big Ten commissioner. So let's run to a quick break. He is Kennington Lloyd Smith III, Kenny Smith with the Des Moines Register, and you see all throughout the show, you'll see all of Kenny's contact information at the bottom of the screen along with mine. We're going to talk Iowa Hawkeye football, and oh, by the way, that new Brian Ferentz contract that seems to be getting, as you're smiling with me, seems to be getting a little bit of attention and fans' attention for sure. So Kenny and I are going to break that down, Hawkeye football, and then we're going to close out talking Iowa Hawkeye men's basketball. Of course, Bluter's Bunch has some big games upcoming. Tom Brands and his guys close out the season this Sunday at home at Carver Hawkeye, their regular season against Oklahoma State, and then they get ready for the Big Ten tournament wrestling, and then also nationals, and then of course Bluter's Bunch has another repeat game against Indiana. That's going to be huge, although this time, Kenny, it's at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Can't wait for that. They've got another game against Maryland, their closing schedule of the regular season before Bluter's Bunch gets to the Big Ten tournament. They've got some tough games ahead of them. And again, we'll talk men's basketball with their tough schedule ahead of them as well. So we'll be back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
To have a strong finish, you need an excellent start. It's true on the track and also in the field. That's why Mershman Seeds works tirelessly to deliver cutting-edge technology year after year. Introducing Starting Line, Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, now providing added protection from white mold and sudden death syndrome all season. Ask for Starting Line seed treatment from Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Chevrolet. We've lived through some very interesting times the last few months. Ensuring everyone's safety is more important than ever. That is why we're participating in the Chevy Clean program. At your request, we will pick up your vehicle, service it, and return it after we've cleaned it using the current CDC guidelines. This is just another way to work towards exceeding your expectations. So give us a call and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, and Kenny Smith, Kennington Lloyd Smith III with the Des Moines Register and Hawk Central. You see all of Kenny's information throughout this program at the bottom of the screen along with mine. So, Kenny, I joked with you off the air, but I'm going to kind of do it to you. Brian Ferentz's new contract. Go. I mean, there is so much made from fans. Again, I don't know where to start because there's so many things. I'm going to get out of your way and let you break this down for us, please.
Yeah, I think the first takeaway that I had when I first read the news is the first positive that I had is there is some accountability factor there. And I think at its core, that is what Hawkeye fans are looking for, is for Gary Barta, the athletic director, to be a strong enough leader to at least have some guidelines in play. Well, 25 points per game across 13 games, conceivably 12 in the regular season, one for the bowl game. Should Iowa make the Big Ten championship, that would be 14 games. And a minimum of 7 wins. And I think that I'll start with the wins first. That seemed like a very odd metric to include in his performance just because there are so many factors that go into winning a game, and there's not any other assistants, at least to my knowledge, that have a wins clause in their contract. So that was a little interesting to me. And the number, I thought, kind of undershot what Iowa's done over the last several years because Kirk Ferentz talked after the Music City Bowl and again in his intro presser on signing day about the importance of Iowa being one of a few programs that's won 8 games every single year since 2015. It's an elite group. We're talking about the Georgias, the Bamas, the Clemsons, and then Iowa. To be in that tier is significant, and he said as much. So I would have liked that to have been the floor. Obviously, 7 wins is not the goal. 8 wins is not the goal, but that seemed like a more appropriate number. If you're going to include wins at all, I would have liked it at that 8 number. The 25 points, I understand where they were coming from because Kirk also pointed to the fact that Iowa's 55-3 when they've scored 25 points or more over the last several years. I would have liked to seen an offensive distinction in that points per game total. But the number itself, I mean, that would put Iowa in the mid-80s in terms of points per game compared to 123 where they were. So essentially, it's asking Brian to move Iowa from one of the worst offenses in the country to one of the worst in Power 5, because there are 65 Power 5 teams, 17 teams were between 123 where Iowa's at in that 85 mark where 25 points per game was. So, in the bottom quarter of Power 5. And amazingly, with Iowa's great defense and special teams, that would be enough to, go to the Big Ten championship. I mean, 25 points per game with last year's team, definitely would have won 10-2 at the least, and maybe could have challenged Ohio State and Michigan a little bit tougher than they did. So I understand the mark. Personally, I would have liked to have seen it a little higher. I think that the number that I was looking for was something that Kirk and Gary Barta spoke to in the presser, which is 29. They said Brian's first 4 years, he averaged 29 points per game, and that was at a time where they obviously had more offensive talent than they do now. They feel like they have more talent. Obviously, they went into the portal and added a lot of players. So I think that probably would have been a little bit more of an appropriate number. And 29 points per game would have been 61st in the country, which is average. But that is what people want out of Iowa's offense.
I would take that.
Top 60, 75 offense with the great defense and special teams they have. And Iowa is a New Year's Six level team.
Yes.
I don't think anybody could dispute that. So the parameters of it were a little odd. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that they published it at all, because I think ultimately I understand what the goal was to kind of like create a level of accountability, but I do think it created a distraction. And I think that it's going to be the main focus of next season is Iowa going to get to 300 points, which is 25 over 12 games, and how are they going to do it? Are they going to run it up on Utah State and Western Michigan early to get the points per game total up? If they're up 24-3, like in the Purdue game, Kirk referenced that in his intro presser. He said that was a game that we felt like we could have kept mashing the gas and scoring more points, but we just decided to control the clock and get out of there. Are they going to do that next season? If they have an opportunity to tack on some more points, are they going to be aggressive? Are they going to pull back? And I just imagine there's going to be a metaphorical scoreboard that sits over Kinnick that starts. It says 300 at opening kickoff, and every time Iowa scores, it's like going to be a countdown to 0. So
another scoreboard in the sky, like you said.
Exactly. So there's good elements. Obviously, there's some things that that we can nitpick, but ultimately, I do appreciate the fact that there's some accountability. Yeah. And I think that it's going to be something that's going to at least be tangible that we can monitor next season.
I mean, there are places to be reasonable, to your point. Yeah. But I think with Cade McNamara coming in, we know the tight end room is loaded with Estranga coming back, and what a year he had. Obviously, Laporta's gone, but Lachey is back, and then Eric All coming from Michigan along with Cade McNamara at quarterback. Running backs, we've got returners, and the line is going to be getting better, and a few transfers there. Defense transfer, a big transfer coming in from the ACC, I thought was nice. So there are a lot of positives here, and I don't want to go over our time because we got to talk men's basketball yet, but give me your takeaway of the signing, some of the portal, and then all the guys coming back. This is lined up pretty well for Brian's contract, truthfully.
Yeah, 100%. I'll start with Nick Jackson, who I think potentially could be the most impactful transfer that Iowa's brought in.
Wow,
when you look at Iowa's defense, the question of the defense is what's going to happen at linebacker. That was the position, honestly, even if you think about how much was lost in the transfer portal at receiver, the linebacker room was hit by attrition harder than any position group. You lost 3 all-conference level and all-American level players. Jack Campbell, obviously, Seth Benson. Justin Jacobs is an all-conference level linebacker who got hurt and missed the season, and he's going to most likely be an all-conference linebacker at Oregon if he were to stay healthy. So you bring back Jay Higgins, who is a good player. The point that I'm trying to make is when you look at what Iowa's had a linebacker over the last several years with Josie Jewell, then obviously the Neiman brothers who are in the NFL, and then Jack Campbell, Seth Benson, Justin Jacobs, they've had elite linebacker play. What would Iowa's defense look like without elite linebacker play? I'm not sure, but that would potentially be something on the table this year just because We don't know what's there behind Jay Higgins. He's obviously
Right.
very good, but there's a lot of unproven guys behind him. So you bring in Nick Jackson, like you said, 3-time All-ACC, had over 100 tackles this year, and it's significant to note that because Virginia played only 10 games because they had the shooting on campus, and they canceled some games. So the fact that he was still All-ACC, over 100 tackles, the 5 sacks, and the pass deflections in a limited amount of games is very impressive. So I think that shores up that linebacker group, and I think that that's why the impact is so great.
Look, Kenny, let's do this. Let's run to our last break, and then when we come back, you and I will talk. We'll go in-depth into Iowa men's basketball. We've talked a little bit about Bluter's Bunch. We've talked some wrestling. We really laid out and took a deep dive into football, and I really appreciate you doing that because there were a lot of things that were being spoken about hyperbolically or people speaking in hyperbole, and it's like, okay, let's take a level-headed look at this and see where we go from here. And there's so much more we could be talking about with football as far as Kirk Ferentz's contract goes till 2029. Does he stay through that whole time, or if not, when does he leave and retire? Who takes his place? I mean, there's a lot of things we could look into, and we will at another time.
Right, yeah, 100%.
So as you're smiling with me going, yeah, Dave, we could really, we could be on forever. But let's run to a break. And then again, thanks to Michael Merrick, my production partner, but we're the Hawkeyed with Dave O'Hara. Kennington Lloyd Smith III with the Des Moines Register and Hawk Central. Kenny Smith, as you see all his information along with mine at the bottom of the screen throughout this show. So we'll be back with more Hawkeye to close it out in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Automotive Family. We're living through some of the most interesting and challenging times many of us have ever seen. Knowing who you can rely on is more important than ever. Many of us turn to our families to get us through, and the same holds true here. From our fair, upfront pricing to exceptional service after the sale, we truly want to exceed your expectations. So give us a call or stop by and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Who do you trust to produce the best yield? A seat company that's chasing technology or a seat company that's writing a book on it? Merschman Seeds is a leader in technology. We're independent and family owned. Our sister company, MS Technologies, provides access to world-class traits and genetics. And our starting line seed treatment is second to none. Who can you trust with your yields? Merschman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. There he is, Kenny Smith, Kennington Lloyd Smith III with the Des Moines Register and Hawk Central. All of Kenny's information along with mine at the bottom of the screen throughout this program. Kenny, we talked about Iowa men's basketball in the beginning just a little bit. We said we're going to talk about it. Well, let's spend the whole segment talking about Fran McCaffrey's guys. You've really got to see this team in and out, at home, on the road. Give me your takeaway. They got this big Ohio State game coming up. And again, we record this show on Tuesday afternoon, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. But by the time you see this show, the Hawks will have already played at home against Ohio State, hopefully to avenge their loss earlier in Columbus, where they lost to Ohio State, which has floundered miserably since they beat the Hawkeyes, and that was a 93-77 game, and Sensabaugh went crazy good for Ohio State, the freshman, and is having a nice year for a freshman, but that's a game the Hawks are going to regret or wish they could have had revenge on.
Yeah, 100%. That was a game that I was solo at the Ohio State trip. There was a few of us at Purdue, but that was also like another road game where things kind of went awry. And that Ohio State game, the half-court defense in the second half was just not where it was supposed to be. Rebounding, obviously, Iowa got beat pretty bad on the boards up there. And it was a really big selling point or talking point at availability today. Every single person, whether it was Fran McCaffrey or Chris Murray or Peyton Sanford or Connor McCaffrey, everybody pointed to the defense in that game not being up to par. And it was being connected on defense and being able to pick up assignments and not leave so many players open. And referencing the last Minnesota game, I think the big takeaway that I had from that game that correlates to Ohio State and a few other road games they've had this year is when things go awry, that's when things start to spiral for the team. There hasn't been that many moments where they faced adversity on the road and been able to kind of battle back from that and win. Obviously, they had a big win at Rutgers, but it's been pretty inconsistent in the month of January. And I thought that Minnesota game, regardless of the opponent, was a game where Iowa really rolled with the punches throughout the contest and found a way to win. I mean, you look at just a blind box score, 38% from the field for Iowa, 38% from three, 60% from the free throw line, and still found a way to win on the road. That would have been a game that they would have lost at an earlier point in the season. So the fact that they're finding out different ways to win, and it was led by defense and rebounding, which has haunted them on the road before, I think is a good omen for this Ohio State game. Look at the latter part of these last 6 opponents. These are teams that Iowa's lost to, and a chance to avenge some of those losses. Ohio State, Michigan State, Nebraska. They lost to Nebraska.
Well, and that's why when I said earlier, avenge and revenge, I didn't want to make that the whole theme. But yeah, every game they have at Michigan State, they play again, and they lost at Michigan State with a chance to win. And
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
That's the game.
That's the other game. Yeah.
And their last 6 they've lost to previously.
And you really hit on this, and Peyton Sanford did last week when we had him on the show. This team would have lost a month ago at Minnesota instead of coming back and winning that on the road like they did this past Sunday. I'm really glad you highlighted that because Peyton Sanford said he talked with Tony Perkins about, hey, we need to flip a switch. They were both in miserable, mired in slumps. Peyton himself was, as Tony. And the same with Connor McCaffrey when they lost those 3 Big Ten games right away. Penn State, he said after that Penn State game, he said, Connor and I sat down and really talked. And then another start, Kenny, in the Big Ten season to 0-3. Right. And then now they're rolling at 8-6 as we record this today on Tuesday, February 14th. But when you take a look at that and 16-9 overall, you really hit upon something off the air that I want to bring on the air. 16-9 right now with the remaining schedule, as you said, the remaining regular season 6 games they have in conference, and they could this team is hard to tell. Are they going to go 0-6? Are they going to go 6-0? Are they going to go 4-2? I mean, after this Thursday game, that again viewers will have already known the result by the time this airs. Then Sunday at Northwestern, who, oh, by the way, what'd they do? Oh, Chris Collins and his Northwestern Wildcats just beat number 1 Purdue.
I mean, you look at Iowa's 6 remaining games, all of them are high stakes. They all mean something.
Yes.
And Iowa's season, for as well as they've played, and I think, honestly, when you think about the amount of injuries that Iowa has faced, I mean, they really haven't been healthy, but for a handful of games, when you think about the entire team, every scholarship player being healthy and at full tilt, very few games this year. I think Fran McCaffrey deserves a lot of credit for Iowa being 16-9 to this point. That said, their season could still go either way or any which way with these next 6 games because a lot of them, on paper, Iowa might have an advantage over this team or that team, but it's still going to be a toss-up just because the Big Ten has so much parity.
If you don't think Indiana is going to have something to end the regular season against Iowa, we all know how I don't want to say catty, but it definitely got into some smack talk between coaches and players, and it's going to be at Indiana, and they beat Purdue recently. Trace Jackson-Davis was a co-Big Ten Player of the Week, and he's just been playing that way for the last month. You talk about getting healthy for the first time, and you're correct, and even if you include Patrick McCaffrey with his anxiety disorder and came back now and working in his minutes, Indiana hasn't been healthy for a while, and they are now. So you nailed it. You really honed in on something off the air, and I want to bring on the air. They and you've alluded to it a couple of times here in this segment. Fran's going with basically 8 guys now. I joked with you off the air and said, boy, Minnesota could have used some guys. They only played 8 guys because that's all they had healthy. Iowa played 8 guys, and Josh Dix was the 8th guy, and he only played a handful of minutes. That's the key. They've got to get off that March sadness instead of March Madness. They came off that great high of winning the Big Ten tournament and going on that run last year, and then thud in the opening round of the Big Dance of March Madness. So that's the other thing is you want to, as you know, Kenny, you want to play your best basketball at the end of the season, arcing into the tournament. That's what a lot of us Hawkeye fans are concerned now. Where do we go from here going into March if they make March Madness even?
Yeah, right. I think that going with the rotations, I think that one, it just kind of shows where Fran's trust is at, and it's obviously with the veterans of the team. You look at their starting lineup, all upperclassmen, then Peyton and Patrick coming off of the bench as your 6th and 7th man, and Josh Dix, while he is a freshman, has a maturity about him on the court. I think he has an established floor that some other guys on the bench just don't have right now, and I think that's why Fran trusts to put him in the game is because at worst he's at least going to be steady. Right. Josh Dix. So. That's what I would say about the rotation. And then with the team, I still think that there is improvement for the team ahead. You look at the backcourt with Ulis and Perkins. They've had up and down performances, throughout the season. Mm-hmm. If they can kind of get on one accord and start playing consistently, I think that could add another element to the team. So there's still areas out there for Iowa to kind of take that next step. that can inspire some confidence that they can win a game in the tourney this upcoming year.
Well, I think that's well said, and I can't improve upon that. So he is Kenny Smith, Kennington Lloyd Smith III with the Des Moines Register and Hawk Central. Really appreciate Kenny taking the time to join us for the whole show. As I mentioned to you viewers before, we've done full-length shows on features of the greats of Gary Dolphin, Lisa Bluter, Caitlin Clark, Monica Sonano, Peyton Sanford. We even took a deep dive into NIL and did a full show with Brad Heinrichs of the Iowa Hawkeye Swarm Collective. So, Kenny, I really appreciate you giving us the whole show and A to Z, everything Hawkeye Athletics. Great seeing you again. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. For Kenny Smith and my production partner, Michael Merrick, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you.
And as always, thanks for staying tuned at the end of the program for these rolling credits to give our advertisers and sponsors the attention and credit they so richly deserve. And as always, to our aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.